We're joined now by the former Commercial Secretary to the Treasury under Prime Ministers David Cameron and Theresa May, Lord Jim O'Neill. He was also the chief economist at Goldman Sachs. Conservative peer, now sits as a crossbencher in the House of Lords. Thank you very much for being with us
on the
programme today. Well, it's the great grudge match, isn't it? You know, Boris Johnson versus Rishi Sunak. But, you know, behind the soap opera, things are really, really serious. The new Prime Minister will inherit an extremely difficult economic situation. Who would you like to see become the next Prime Minister?
Well, in your intro, you described me as a crossbencher, so I think consistent with me sitting on the independent crossbenches, I shouldn't really have an opinion on such matters, I suppose. But I think if you look at what each has said about these issues in the past, Rishi obviously would be the safer pair of hands. And in many ways, what Jeremy Hunt has announced since he appeared on the scene, what is it, only just over a week ago, it seems forever. It's effectively what Rishi suggested would have to be the case when he was campaigning in the summer. So I think certainly fair enough to say that the markets are conditioned for the kind of view that Rishi would currently have. Whereas with Boris, as we know, we don't quite know what you're going to get, let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, Chris Heaton-Harris is saying that he thinks that Boris will stick to the Jeremy Hunt plan, but we haven't really, as you said, had a nailed-down explanation of what that economic vision could be. Do you think that might make the markets a bit nervous?
There are lots of other issues going on. On Friday, I read summaries about the markets being worried again because of the appearance of Boris in the campaign. But there's also a lot going on in the US and in China, and also tricky issues looming in Japan with financial markets. So you have to be careful. Some days, big moves happen that affect our markets that have nothing to do with us. But all of that said, the markets, because of the remarkable self-inflicted damage of the past few weeks, are looking for fiscal credibility in the UK. And they're sort of they were assuming till Thursday we were going to get it, but it's very hard to see that if Boris appears on the scene, first of all, Jeremy Hunt would necessarily stay as Chancellor. And if Boris would want to go back to everything he said, as it's been a consistent theme of many, how can he do all these things about spending everywhere and keep taxes low? And they don't really go together. And at the end of the day, the big issue facing any leader in the foreseeable future is we have a conflict between promises of taxes to be as low as possible, a very strong public appetite for spending, and fiscal credibility. And some things have to give, obviously. And then on top of that, and I really do think it's very sad given the self-inflicted mess, there is an urgent need to somehow get out of this productivity trap that the country's in, and somebody do something to take us out of it. And I did personally advocate to the Treasury Select Committee earlier this year that
Unfortunately, it does look like that link, we're having a few problems with the link to Jim O'Neill there, unfortunately. We will let you know if that is re-established. OK, well, let's try again. Cross our fingers. Technical gremlins all over the place, but we can see you, so let's hope...
Hi, I'm back.
Excellent, good stuff.
Yeah, I'm here.
You were just talking about the sort of economic picture. How big is, the black hole in the public finances, and how do you think it should be dealt with?
At the short term, because of what's happened, the country is going to have to undertake fiscal consolidation and fiscal credibility above all else. And so something along the lines of what the OBR has set out and what Jeremy Hunt has said he's going to do. I don't really see how we can veer away from that without an even worse reaction from the financial markets, unfortunately. Sadly, it's only because of the nature and the style in which the self-inflicted mess of the previous leadership brought it around, because we do need to do something to boost our productivity rate. And I think there is a case for a different approach to fiscal behavior, particularly a case for much bigger government spending. And at some point, some government is going to have to do that in this country. But I think that option is off the table for whoever wins the leadership in the next few days here.
You've been, a big backer of the levelling up agenda. You're vice chair of the Northern Powerhouse. Are you worried what spending cuts could mean to that agenda?
Well, I'm worried specifically about that, of course. And I'm also worried more broadly that it sort of takes us back to where we were in style to 2010. And there are lots of major economic challenges, including obviously the financing of the health and social needs, as well as these mammoth geographic inequalities in the country. And we're only going to be able to really solve them if a very patient source of investment capital appears. And that very patient source is the government. But I can't see, given the damage the government has created for itself and for the country's reputation, how they can execute such a program in the very short term without much bigger tax increases. But what I think should also therefore be happen as soon as some kind of proper stability and political stability and fiscal credibility is established, is there's some kind of request for a review of the fiscal policy framework where you actually, as opposed to just announce some random thing, you ask all the expert players like the OBR, maybe the Bank of England, is there scope for having, let's call it a modern version of the Gordon Brown golden rule where government can invest more? Because that's the only way we're going to get out of this productivity trap, in my opinion.
But doesn't that mean more borrowing, which is what got us into this mess in the first place?
Well, yeah, of course it does. But I think there is a very clear case for more borrowing for investment spending, where I would guess most economists you would quiz would believe there are what economists would describe are positive multiplier effects, which means the future growth performance from that investment spending will benefit quite clearly. And you'd have to do it in a really sound, transparent and approved way by the likes of the OBR. Otherwise, it would be problematical. But I think the case at some stage to go down that path is very, very strong. But I don't think it's an option that faces this incoming leader because of the mess his or her colleagues have created for them.
What do you think is likely to happen to mortgages and also perhaps house prices as well, in the short term or medium term?
I think the best that could be said is if whoever wins follows through with, let's call it Jeremy Hunt style promises, mortgage rates will now not go up as much as they almost definitely would have done 2 weeks ago. And if you look carefully at what happened in the markets over the course of the week, there's been a slight reduction in the peak of interest rates in the next 12 months that the markets have had priced. And if you look at what a couple of Bank of England MPC members said towards the end of the week, they were implying, I emphasize, implying that they might not tighten as much as otherwise if we restore fiscal credibility.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Really fascinating to talk and to get your take on all of that. Thank you.